Odessa, a 17-year-old recently diagnosed type 2 insulin-dependent diabetic, experienced a hypoglycemic episode whilst driving due to inadequate food intake following insulin administration, which resulted in an RTC. Attending paramedics Prakash Ezra treated Odessa with 15 grams of oral glucose, which improved her condition, and they advised her that she should be transported to hospital. Odessa, however, refused transportation, resulting in Ezra placing her under an Emergency Examination Authority, EEA, for medical treatment. The Mental Health Act enables paramedics to involuntarily transport patients to a public health facility for assessment by implementing an EEA with the overall aim to improve the health and well-being of individuals who have impaired decision-making capacity. An EEA is implemented if an individual is of imminent risk of serious harm caused by a major disturbance in the person's mental capacity, whether caused by an illness, disability, injury, intoxication, or another reason. Commonly, it is believed that those presenting with signs and symptoms of a mental illness have impaired decision-making capacity and thus can be placed under an EEA. A mental illness is a condition characterized by a clinically significant disturbance of thought, mood, perception, or memory. However, someone cannot be determined to have a mental illness merely because of their religious beliefs, racial group, economic status, sexual orientation, decision to engage in sexual promiscuity or indecent conduct, decision to take alcohol or drugs, have an intellectual disability, are involved with illegal behavior or family conflict, or have been previously treated for a mental illness. Hypoglycemia causes neuroglycopenia, which affects cognitive function and results in the disruption of normal thought, mood, perception, and memory. In this case, Odessa experienced blurred vision and impaired concentration and perception, evidenced by losing control of the car. These disturbances align with the definition of a mental illness, and thus, if following common belief, would support Ezra's decision to place her under an EEA. However, as no appropriate assessments were carried out to meet internationally accepted standards, we cannot determine if Odessa presented with a mental illness. Capacity is the ability to understand the nature and purpose of the proposed treatment, the consequences for accepting or refusing this treatment, and the ability to communicate one's own decision. Thus must be assessed independently from a mental illness. Odessa's initial symptoms demonstrated an impaired decision-making capacity, presenting as an imminent risk of serious harm, allowing for the implementation of an EEA. However, capacity is not a fixed state, but rather transient and subject to change according to one's mental status and circumstance. After the administration of oral glucose, Odessa's condition corrected, improving cerebral functioning and reversing any previous disturbance in thought, mood, perception, or memory. Displayed capacity when she demonstrated an understanding of the proposed treatment and risks, freely and voluntarily made the decision, and communicated her decision to refuse transportation. This suggests that Odessa had capacity post-treatment and prior to transportation under an EEA, and therefore does not support Ezra's decision to do so. Odessa is under the age of 18 and therefore is considered a minor per the Child Protection Act 1999. Thus, the consent or refusal in regards to transportation of a young person must be gained from a biological or adoptive parent or a guardian. However, common law provides that a young person aged 13 to 17 can make decisions about their healthcare if it can be demonstrated that they have Gillick competence. Gillick competence refers to a young person's maturity and understanding regarding the consequences of receiving or refusing healthcare, and thus demonstrating they have capacity. Odessa demonstrates an understanding of her diabetes mellitus by stating her knowledge of the requirement for food intake after administering insulin and recognizing the cause of her crash. It can also be suggested that Odessa is mature, as she is 1 week from becoming 18 years old and has obtained her driver's license. Hence, Odessa sufficiently demonstrates her maturity and understanding in assessment, proving she is Gillick competent and thus has the capacity to consent or refuse. Odessa's choice to refuse transport was a valid refusal. At the time of refusal, it was assessed that her capacity was intact as her condition improved from the oral glucose. When a patient refuses transport, the attending paramedic is required to conduct what is known as a Verker assessment to assess the validity of the refusal. Odessa's decision was voluntary, and there were no undue influences. While not clearly stated in the case study, we can assume that Ezra informed Odessa of the risks of staying on scene and suffering another hypoglycemic episode. However, further information will be provided in order for her to make an informed decision regarding transportation. Additionally, it was previously determined that Odessa had capacity at the time of being placed under an EEA. In terms of advice, Ezra should have provided Odessa with recommendations instead of abusing his power to transport Odessa against her will. Ezra's justification for the EEA was that Odessa did not adequately understand the consequences of her hypoglycemia. However, it is clear through the use of the Verker assessment that Odessa's choice to remain on scene was a valid refusal and therefore does not support Ezra's decision to place her under an EEA. According to the Queensland Ambulance Service, EEAs do not apply in circumstances where a person of sound mind makes a voluntary decision to refuse medical treatment, even if that decision may result in the person suffering preventable harm. Although Ezra may have authorised an EEA in the best interest of Odessa's health, Odessa's valid refusal indicates that Ezra's decision was unsuitable and inappropriate in this situation and directly violates Section 157D of the Public Health Act, depriving her of her liberty. Liberty refers to a person's statutory right or privilege and their ability to be free from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority. The only justification for depriving Odessa of her liberty and placing her under an EEA is if she was at imminent risk of serious harm to herself or others. However, this investigation has concluded that Odessa's condition improved following treatment, decreasing her risk of imminent harm. By inappropriately placing Odessa under an EEA, Ezra deprives Odessa of her rights and liberties to an extent which is not required to protect her safety and welfare or the safety of others. This contradicts the purpose of the Mental Health Act, which aims to safeguard and be the least restrictive means protecting the rights and liberties of a person. Therefore, placing Odessa under an EEA could result in trespass to person. As discussed, Odessa demonstrated capacity to refuse transport for ongoing treatment. Therefore, it is the paramedic's responsibility to respect her autonomy to ensure beneficence and non-maleficence. Less restrictive ways for an individual to receive treatment involves discussing an alternative solution such as contacting Odessa's family or friends for the completion of her errands, so she voluntarily consents to transport to receive ongoing treatment at a hospital. Odessa's parents may also assist in discussing with Odessa the importance of further treatment in hospital, considering that a hypoglycemic episode may reoccur. Appropriate documentation of her refusal for transport, evidence of her capacity, and steps taken to educate her of the consequences of refusing transport should be completed in order to ensure that should an unfavourable outcome occur, the paramedics involved will have evidence to support their actions, and thus it is our belief that Odessa should not have been placed under an EEA.